Welcome to this new automotive news video for Friday, April 10, 2026. Today we're going to talk about Tesla, which is reportedly preparing a new electric vehicle for less than 25,000 euros. We'll also talk about Mercedes, which is ending the production and sale of one of its four-cylinder gasoline engines. But also about BYD, which for the European market is betting on a type of vehicle that has almost disappeared. And then we'll talk a little about Stellantis, since the group has just published its results for the first quarter of 2026. Stellantis, very positive results with numbers that haven't been seen in over a decade for some of the group's brands. Has Stellantis finally gotten out of trouble? We'll talk about it together. I hope these topics will interest you. If that's the case, I'm counting on you to show it by leaving a little like as usual, subscribing for the next videos, boosting this one if the option appears for you, and leaving a comment where you share your opinion on today's news, especially about the Tesla topic. If Tesla came out with an electric car for less than 25,000 euros and with decent range, would you be ready to switch to an electric car? And that's actually going to be our first topic. Remember, at the beginning of the 2020s, there was talk that Tesla would develop and eventually release a low-cost electric vehicle. It's a project they had started working on, but in 2024, Elon Musk decided to abandon it to focus on other things, like robo-taxis or even humanoid robots. He apparently ended up changing his mind. And at Tesla, within the engineering and development teams, they are reportedly working on a new model. It's not exactly low-cost, since this electric vehicle would sell for about 25,000 euros. While that's not cheap, it would be a new entry-level model, much less expensive than the current Model 3 and Model Y. And based on its dimensions, it would probably be positioned against an electric Peugeot 2008 since we're not talking about a city car or a compact, but indeed a crossover SUV, which, according to the first information reported by engineers working on the project, would be about 4.28 meters long. According to the first information we have as well, this vehicle would be an entirely new model, not a modified version of an already existing one. One might imagine that in order to try to lower production costs a bit, it would just be a kind of cut-down Model Y. No, it's truly a separate new vehicle, developed from A to Z. It is also said that this new electric vehicle would only have one motor, unlike other models from the group, which sometimes have two. It would also be much lighter than its cousin, the current Model Y, which still weighs around 2 tons. Whereas here, we're talking more about a vehicle weighing about 1.5 tons, and the targeted range would be between 480 and 530. In reality, it probably still wouldn't be enough for people who drive a lot, but it's true that at this price, currently 25,000 euros, there's almost nothing available that can go over 500 kilometers. In this price range, we're currently more around 400-kilometer Tesla would be interested in global production, meaning making its cars in China as well, of course, since it's cheaper, but also in the United States and in Europe. For countries that have tax policies that are strongly opposed to Chinese-made vehicles, there is still something important to point out about this vehicle, which is that, for now, Tesla is only at the development stage, which means we're not close to actually seeing it released. And it will still take a lot of patience before you can buy a new Tesla model for 25,000 euros. Probably several years, hoping, for Tesla's sake, that by then electric cars will still exist, but especially that electric cars won't have advanced so quickly that offering 500 kilometers of range for 25,000 euros will be technically outdated. On the Mercedes side, it's confirmed that the M1 39 four-cylinder gasoline engine has been discontinued by the brand. We already talked about it a few months ago in a video when it was just a rumor, but now it's official. This engine, which is often used as the entry-level option for sporty models, especially from AMG, is going to be completely discontinued for 2 reasons. First, because it's too expensive to get it certified for Euro 7 standards, but also because this engine exceeds the noise limits required by other European regulations. This engine is going to disappear completely, and part of the AMG lineup, including all models ending in 43 or 45 AMG, will be gone. But don't think that Mercedes is going to become a more modest brand, since Mercedes has already announced that for its future entry-level models, they will continue to rely on a new 3-liter inline 6-cylinder engine, the M256 Evo, which will be certified to Euro 7 standards hybridized, and whose power output should always be above 450 horsepower. For your information, Mercedes confirms they are developing a new 4-liter twin-turbo V8 engine series, certified to Euro 7 standards and switching from a crossplane to a flat-plane crankshaft. The brand says this should boost engines of the same size by several dozen horsepower. So it really is the end of an era at Mercedes-AMG, which will unfortunately make access to sports cars increasingly expensive, whereas before a few tens of thousands of euros were enough to buy a Mercedes-AMG 4-cylinder with this higher entry point, you'll now probably have to spend more than 100,000 euros to get the AMG badge. On the BYD side, they want to come to Europe with a minivan type model, so it won't be directly through the BYD brand, but through Denza, which is one of the brands owned by BYD and is supposed to be its premium brand. You should know that the minivan segment in Europe is pretty much dead. Over the years, Europeans have abandoned minivans in favor of buying large SUVs instead. Take, for example, the latest Espace from Renault, which has always historically been a minivan. The latest generation has become an SUV. By the way, let me remind you that the Renault Espace is currently living its final days. That hasn't gone unnoticed. So Denza saw that with no one offering minivans but a niche of interested customers, they could fill the gap and offer one. That's what Denza plans to do in Europe with the D9 DMI. It will be a minivan that's 5.25 meters long, almost 2 meters wide, and 1.9 meters high, which according to BYD follows its comfort concept called 777 OGS, for 7 passengers, enough space for 7 carry-on suitcases, and enough space for 7 backpacks. As I explained, Denza is a rather high-end brand. That's why the interior of the base versions of this D9 DMI is already very upscale. We're talking here about a panoramic roof of 1 square meter with electric blinds and 99% UV protection, heated, ventilated, massaging front seats, electrically adjustable in 8 positions, and even more comfort for the 4 rear seats with 14-way electric adjustment, heated, ventilated, and massaging seats, with 16 different massage points compared to 10 for the front seats and reclining up to 152 degrees. Keep in mind that these seats feature the AirSpa Zero Gravity System. All these seats are designed to incline the body for optimal weight distribution, reducing pressure on the back and legs. Now, like with all other modern cars, there are screens everywhere. 15 inches for the central screen, 10 inches for the passenger, 10 inches for the driver, screens in the rear armrests, and 2 12.8-inch screens on the back of the front seats for the passengers. As for the engine, this D9 DMI is based on super hybrid technology, which means it's a combustion engine paired with an electric motor that does 2 things. It can either directly drive the wheels, or it can work as a range extender by charging the vehicle's battery using gasoline while driving to boost the all-electric range. So, when it comes to the engine, it's actually much less impressive than the interior of the vehicle, since it's just a basic 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder gasoline engine paired with 2 electric motors for a total power output that's actually pretty low compared to what you get in most big cars these days. 350 horsepower. The battery is a blade battery, which is BYD's new technology that promises record-breaking charging times. Here, it has a 58 kilowatt capacity, allowing for 210 kilometers of electric range. And with the gasoline engine, the total range is nearly 1,000 kilometers. As for the purely electric part, you should know that the battery accepts charging up to 559 kilowatt at peak, which is huge. That's almost the maximum you can get in Europe for ultra-fast charging stations, allowing you to charge from 10% to 70% of the battery in just 5 minutes. And to finish with another round of equipment, you should know that the sound system has 16 speakers, and this one is equipped with a compartment that can function either as a fridge, cooling down to 6 degrees Celsius, or as a mini oven, heating up to 100 degrees Celsius, as well as retractable tray tables in the front seats for the rear passengers. Well, all of this obviously comes at a cost. We don't know the price of this D9 DMI yet, but we know it's not going to be a minivan comparable to an S-Space in terms of price, since here we're probably looking at something over $100,000. To finish, let's talk about Stellantis, which has actually had some pretty good results at the start of 2026. First of all, in terms of market share, we've returned to levels we haven't seen in 10 years. So 10 years ago, Stellantis didn't exist, but the market share of the different brands that make it up today is higher than what they represented 10 years ago before Stellantis was created. In the first quarter of 2026 in the European market, Stellantis sold almost 700,000 cars. That's an increase of 5% compared to the first quarter of 2025. An increase that allows it to gain 0.2 points in market share, reaching 17.5%. And that's not counting Leapmotor, a new Chinese brand Stellantis has distributed in Europe for about 2 years. If we add it, the group even reaches 18.1% market share, which is still quite huge. The brands that performed the best during this period are Fiat up 25%, Lancia up 15%, Citroën up 12%, and Opel up 10%. That said, those are impressive numbers and nice increases, but these are still brands that started from very low sales volumes. On the other hand, unfortunately, Stellantis didn't provide any information about its biggest European brand, which is still Peugeot. I suppose that's not a very good sign, and unfortunately, sales are probably not doing well. That's not surprising, since it's likely one of the group's brands whose image has suffered most in recent years from reliability issues with gasoline, diesel, or electric engines. By the way, believe it or not, the French brands in the French market are not among those that have boosted the group. In reality, Stellantis owes this impressive increase to Germany, where it saw its sales rise by 15%, and to Italy, Italy, where the Fiat Pandina alone accounts for almost half of all Stellantis vehicles sold during this period. That's great. It's good news if the Pandina is selling well. On the other hand, if it weren't for the Pandina, the Italian numbers would be pretty disastrous, and probably the European numbers as well. So in Italy, there's a certain dependence on the Pandina, and that's not a good thing. Fiat should avoid repeating what happened with its 500 relying on one model works only while it's selling well. Once sales drop, it's a disaster. That's all for today's news. I hope you enjoyed the video. If that's the case, as usual, I'm counting on you to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for the next videos, and maybe even supporting the channel with the join button below. I'll see you tomorrow for the first video of the weekend. Ciao!